Happy Tuesday, folks. It's September the 15th, right? Yes. Tomorrow's my wife's birthday. I should know this. It is the 15th. Metrics analysis working group. Every time we take a look at the persistent link items, if you took a look at our agenda, it's changed quite a bit. I did a lot of work yesterday getting things into a hopefully an easier to read state and moving things out into issues. Ilya, do you want to take us through our dashboard?
Thank you, of course. Donik is joining as well. Right, so I've made a few changes as requested actually 2 weeks ago, but sorry, I just got to that this time. So support weekend view is the first tab. There's going to be a split of SAS General. I didn't know how to name it better, so I just named it SAS General. And there is a split between that and SAS Accounts. There's obviously only data for a few months there, but we have it. And also added the 95% FRT, SAT, 85% for NRT kind of lines, and a total one without LNR, which is similar to what we're presenting in our key metrics reviews. Yeah, in regards to the numbers, I've already actually checked. We're still maintaining the downward slope in FRT for SAS General.
Okay. Do we want to talk about, like, how outside of this pure metrics do we want to get? Do we want to talk about Sean's staffing plan for SAS, or should we cover that in other meetings and just focus on metrics? TC, looking to you.
Do we think that's the solution? If we think that's the solution, we should probably talk about it here and come to agreement, and then bring it to agreement in the manager meetings.
I mean, it looks to me like the main issue we're having with FRT is in two areas: LNR and SAS. LNR, we have a concrete plan to staff up, and I think we're starting to see gains. Is that validated by the metrics, Donik or Ilya?
I'll have to have a look, but we are managing things better. I'm definitely seeing less breach tickets in the queue. So just anecdotally, the queue is looking much better. So I've personally felt an impact, a good impact in the queue from having more people. So anecdotally, it feels much lighter and much more manageable with less breach tickets. I still have to just look at the data, comb through that a little bit more before I can say conclusively.
And so we can say probably, but it does seem like it's resource related. I think the resistance point on staffing up SAS is that we've spent a lot of time reducing tickets and we've gotten quite a few out. And so we want to see that effect. Is that correct, Ilya?
Yes, and I also had an additional hypothesis that it might be related to how we're managing the FRT hawks, specifically in SAS. That's something that we might want to look at kind of on a more immediate basis. Might help, because in self-managed it seems to be helping quite a lot, and .com we never really introduced a coherent policy regarding that.
So you're saying if we have FRT hawk in SAS, then that will help.
Immediate results would be shown. Yeah, that's what I'm suspecting. And also given that we are removing some of the load with the free accounts and future pricing model changes potentially, that might get us to a more stable situation. Given that the amount of load on SAS engineers is around 5 to 6 times higher in ticket volume than self-managed, then yes, there is a volume load there, but there are some other stuff that we can do in the meanwhile.
Do we have the right, I guess I'll say critical mass in SAS staff to be able to do a hawk role?
So we do have an idea we're working on right now in EMEA, something we're calling a support crew. I don't know if you heard about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that model, we only need one SAS person online basically on a daily basis, helping out the rest. So the crew would still handle the .com with a priority. However, they will get help with somebody from .com participating and helping in case they need it. Some kind of a focus from that direction as well.
Okay, so the crew is intended to go manage first reply for SaaS and self-managed, and have somebody on the SaaS side associated to that crew on a daily basis.
Yes, and hopefully joining, the Zoom call in case they need assistance. My suspicion is that, and I keep hearing it anecdotally from individuals, that they don't necessarily know how to handle the .com FRTQ. So even though that we help asking the self-managed to deal with the FRT.com queue, I don't think they have the capacity, or maybe don't feel comfortable in having even one person available there. We might not have the people for filling that role every day of the week, but we have 4 .com engineers in EMEA, so at least Monday till Thursday, maybe Friday without a .com. That's kind of our initial thoughts about it.
Okay, so I think I guess there's probably another week or two that we can, I think, confidently see the impact of the free user changes. So if we don't see improvement, if we see even level, then I think we got to relook at the actual staffing. Is the crew thing being tested next week, or is that still under discussion, the timing in the EMEA?
The timing is still under discussion. We wanted to make sure that it kind of works with everybody. The idea is, of course, to improve quality of life, first of all, for the engineers, but it seems that we should be able next week to start testing it.
Okay, so we can bring that part up in the syncs this week. I don't know if you talked about it in APEC, but all right, so I think the jury's still out on whether we add more .com folks just yet. So we got a couple of weeks to see impact of free user changes, potential, which might be a few more weeks of the crew implementation test in EMEA to see if we start to improve.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that even if we add a few more SaaS individuals, it's going to take 2 to 3 months for that to wrap up. So anything we can do right now to help would be beneficial.
Well, yeah, and what I'd be concerned about a little bit is, well, not just a little bit, but I'd be concerned about is hiring, getting them onboarded, and then seeing the drop in tickets and having to find additional work for them to do. Not that there won't be L&R work for several more months, but.
Yeah. It seems like, now I'm going to be talking without data, but just based on Sean's hiring model, it looks like we need to add the most folks in EMEA. And so if the way that EMEA is going to solve that problem is support crew, then I think that's great. Let's do it. The number of full-time engineers we would need to add in America, I think in the Americas is like 1.5, which I think we're basically already doing just with folks getting onboarded between 3 of our newer staff members who are already doing the hybrid. So Wei-Ming, do you know off the top of your head how many folks you, like in Sean's model, you would need to add to SaaS?
In APEC, I think 1, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Yeah, whereas I think in EMEA, it's like, what is it, 4.5? It was a lot. So, I mean, I'm fine with that. I think that will work. We just need some urgency on an action. So yeah, we'll work on that through the manager sync. Item number 2, I created a project to pull out the investigation notes from this doc. So you can take a look at the issues in there. I link them also above in the hypotheses. I did make a cut line where like we had added some additional ones that we weren't taking a look at yet. So if we want, I can create issues for those as well. I just thought, let's get the ones that we're actively working in there, and then we can add some more later. I also added a board. It's not supremely amazing. I also added a milestone, which is also not supremely amazing as a view, but they do exist if that's how you prefer to consume them. And then number 4, I have a request. Can we change the meeting time for this? Historically, this has been the day that I take my kids to school. And if I do that, it would cut my availability short by 15 minutes. So we could, I guess there's actually option C is be more efficient. But I guess it would be like move earlier, which maybe Wei Ming and Donique wouldn't be sad about. And Ilya, only Tom and I, and really just me. Move to a different day, which is also totally fine, or meet for less time.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm fine with earlier. I'm fine with moving another day. I do have earlier meetings, I think pretty much every other day. So finding, maybe making this time on a different day might be a challenge, but happy to do either of those.
I mean, if we just move it 15 minutes earlier, that is enough for me.
Yeah, that's fine with me as well.
Is anybody, do you want earlier? Wei Ming, you want earlier?
I'm fine with earlier.
You want 30 minutes earlier?
Sure. I mean, it's not that much different in the larger scheme of things for me, so I'm okay.
Okay.
Does it create a conflict for anybody from a schedule perspective? Anybody have a meeting going on a half hour before this?
Yes, but I can shuffle around.
Okay.
I'll just thank you for your flexibility. Sorry. School is wonderful, but also is re-adding elements to my life that we had forgotten about for a while. Number 5, you have Ilya. That was not English, but please speak.
Speaking. Okay, dashboard updated, we've shown. New hypothesis I mentioned, that's the FRT inconsistency between the groups. I mean, again, just to iterate, yeah, in self-managed, we've seen a significant improvements in reducing the .com. Yes, of course, they're not loaded, but I do feel that introducing a kind of a push on FRTs and NRTs specifically in .com might give us some alleviation there. And the assignment model, so I had a call with Greg last week. We went over a bit of information. These are just screenshots of a few reports. Basically, they're indicating that a ticket, when it is assigned, the median resolution time, the median NRT times for it is lower. So when a ticket is assigned, we respond to them quicker, regardless of preferred region. So all regions tickets, all regional tickets as well get lower NRT for assigned tickets. This is regarding the hypothesis. Yeah.
This, will you report this in the managers meeting? I think this is something that we should message across regions and teams and say, like, look,
yeah.
Understand your resistance, understand the confusion between how to handle assigned tickets for all regions. But if you look at the data, it's not as bad as it feels.
Yep.
Thanks for doing that analysis, Ilya.
All right. Anything else on that? Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
I just want to mention, I quickly had a look at the FRT for LNR just for September so far, 15 days, and it's at 83.4%, which is massive increase. So the thing I've been feeling is, yeah, it's definitely showing up in the stats. So yeah, I think it's just some evidence that we're on the right track there.
Great, thank you. That is very encouraging to hear. Number 9, status on hypotheses action items above. We got through some of them last week, but I think we just need an update on each one. So the first one is ticket volumes too high for team to consistently achieve FRT. As far as I know, there's been no movement on this. It's assigned to me, and this one says TC, but my issue says Ilya.
Yeah, I think it's you.
Which one is it? It's you and me, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just my typo. So, yes. Do you have anything to report on that one, Ilya?
Nothing except the numbers I showed there, but we can talk on our call later today and see what we can. Yeah, cool.
Number 2 was assigned to me. We closed that one out. We're saying, well, I'm moving the data doesn't support that hypothesis, so we don't have to talk about that one. Number 3, focus on PTO over summer and friends and family days have caused lags in performance. Ilya, do you have anything on, or is that mine?
Just what I showed last week, that on its surface, it seems that the fluctuation is minimal and we're only increasing in our week groups. So nothing that I could find so far.
At this point, do you want to look for more evidence, or do you feel comfortable closing it out as not supported?
I think that we can close it out, given also that we have the spreadsheet to keep tracking these things from the Zapier. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I would just, it's hard to kind of be, I think in a consistent manner, if we have just standard volume and we manage to the 30%, 25%, whatever number off on different days, the challenge will be if we get something that bursts and we have 30% of the staff out on a particular day, that will create a problem, right? So it's the combination of storms type of thing. So I think it can be an impact, but it sounds like it on a general volume perspective with the way we're handling company holidays, we're generally good.
And I think in the future, using the spreadsheet with the Zapier, we can edit it a little bit, and then we can kind of watch trends and look backward and see how many people were missing and maybe correlate it. Yeah. Sorry, Lab.
I was gonna say, do you think there's a further action we need is to, I mean, at least generate the issue of develop a standard way of handling high time off days? Right now it's very informal, right? And we try and take a look at the past data when we remember there's a holiday, but there's definitely an improvement that could be made. Is that a follow-up item from this?
I think so. I think it's document what we're doing to track and to schedule, and how we're trying to improve the impact of how we're scheduling against what really happens in the ticket data, right? Because there's, if Friends and Family Day, we take the next 2 to 3 weeks to get everybody through their own day. We have 2 to 3 weeks of data to try to sift through to see what was the impact of that day, right? And that has to go again. So I think it's just a monitoring thing, but also documenting how we want to schedule and how we want to track the pieces.
I will add those notes to the issue, and then we can close out the hypothesis itself and create some follow-up issues. Number 4, our staffing isn't spread appropriately versus the number of tickets that are raised or will reach per hour. We're not asking folks to work the right set of hours. Ilya, do you have an update on that one?
I think that's my item.
Sorry.
I do have an update on this one. So I've been working on some charts that will help give some insight into this. Let me just share my screen. So here we go. Yeah. Ilya helped me with getting like the averages and standard deviations. So I want to thank Ilya for that. Before we go in, I want to emphasize that I'm not 100% sure that the data is correct or that it serves as a proxy measurement for staffing, but it seems promising. So major caveat there. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with sparklines, but the thing with sparklines is that the important thing about them is that we look at the shape of the curve and not the actual numbers itself. So if you look at, this is basically, ignore this NRT because I actually selected FRT for this. Just for exploration purposes. If you kind of look at the average of all the curves, you can kind of see that, and this is in UTC, by the way. So you can see that basically there are a high number of breaches in the early hours of APAC, which doesn't surprise me because there's a known gap in terms of .com coverage. And then it kind of picks up, I think this is about 1 p.m. UTC. So I think this serves as a decent proxy measurement for maybe staffing issues, but at the very least, it tells us where pinpoints are in terms of tickets not being addressed. So just to give you an illustration of why it's important that we look at the shape of the curve, and we also need additional data to sort of give context to that. If you look at the self-managed one, you can kind of see it's pretty spiky. But if you look at the percentages, they're pretty low. So in actual fact, I don't think there's much optimization we can do for self-managed. So that suggests that I think staffing is okay. And if people are kind of feeling pressure from the clock, it sounds like we do have the capacity. Maybe that capacity is just not evenly spread out. So that's my initial conclusion that I'm having right now. So I think these two are pretty useful in terms of sort of giving us a very lagging indicator of where pain points in terms of effort may be at. So what I've been doing for APAC actually, because we do have an experiment for SLA Hawk, is that I did create a dashboard which we are intending to look at FRT and NRT performance. Again, I'm not sure about the validity of the data, but what I plan to do is that this actually gives us a slightly more responsive view of how performance is doing. And this is basically week by week. And what I've done is I've filtered ticket breaches that occur during APAC hours. So you can kind of see the idea here anyway is that as managers, you can look at this and then get a feel for, yeah, you know, is our team doing well and what's the trend looking like? So for self-managed FRT and, you know, next response, both are looking okay. But yeah, I mean, I think we know that .com isn't doing too well, and we can also see that downward trend in FRT as well. So the problem with both of these right now, the spark lines and this slightly more responsive dashboard that I'm building and we'll be testing out in the next few weeks, is that, well, it gives us knowledge that there is a problem. Yeah, it doesn't tell us what we can do about it. So that's something, yeah, I'm still figuring out. So yeah, that's my little spiel here.
This is great, Wei Ming, because I think this takes what we've very loosely done is just took creation times of tickets and associated staffing in those creation times per region. What we haven't done is shifted into regions, into the region itself, where we need to hire to be more efficient and more performant, if you will. So I think if we took the combination of this data and said, okay, well, what locations should we focus hiring on? Should we focus recruiting on? And in you know, in EMEA, in AMER, in APAC, you know, so that we're not just directing to lower location factors, but we're directing to specific locations to be able to build staff in those cross timeframes or whatever the data starts to show us is where we're suffering. So it may also point to, you know, trying to look at different locations that can do different shifts, right? And be more adjustable shifts. So.
Or even just different activities at different hours. So like, for example, in the past in AMER West, we had a sort of like the last hour of your day was clear out breachers and give APAC, you know, clear out the red so that APAC wakes up happy. Even if we had something like that while we look for staff, like this exposes where we need to do that.
Very much.
Cool. Yeah, so my next steps here would be to work on data validation to make sure that it is actually telling us what I think it's telling us. It's not 100% certain yet. So I've already set up, or Ilya has actually suggested I set up a catch up with him this Friday. So I'll be working on this, yeah, with Ilya.
Great. Thank you. Number 5, we went over, I think, last week. This is yours, Donique. What we didn't get to was, are we comfortable closing this out as not supported, or is there more data that needs to be gathered?
Well, I think actually maybe we've gone to a place where we can say there is an impact, and we could say that there's a percentage of SaaS work that that's reasonable to say that that's taking away a percentage of SAS work that could have gone to the SAS queue. So I almost want to say this is true to a degree, and we can throw the percentage out there. We can say 8%, or we can dig in deeper, and I'm not sure what else there is to look at, but maybe getting more months. Yeah, from my point of view, I feel like we have something here where I'm comfortable to say there is an impact to a degree. It's not massive, but there is an impact. So I don't want to say this is completely false. So I guess where I'm at is, okay, it looks like there is an impact, but how much more do we want to know? Do we need more information about exactly what that impact is? Do we want to do anything with the SAS percentage? Yeah, I feel like it's usable, and if we're not going to use it, then yeah, we can close it out. But I do feel like there's something there. It's not completely false.
That brings us to, what do we want to do with things that are true? Like, is there a follow-up? Do we retrospect? Like, the lesson learned is, don't take resources away from a team without replenishing them. Or like,
yeah,
I think there's an element of, we prioritize the whatever, coming back and looking into what we need to do, right? We kind of appreciate that, yep, if we take resources, we rob Peter to pay Paul, Peter's going to suffer, right? So it's just a matter of, is it a black eye, is it a hangnail? So I think that's kind of the next step, but I don't know that it doesn't sound like the impact is as impactful to be a top priority next step kind of thing. I gotta run.
Sorry. It kind of rolls up into what we were talking about before, is like, how are we staffing the SAS queue? So, but I think we maybe what would be good is if, like, I think yours and mine are quite similar. Like, if we could handbook the approach that we took, and then in the future, if we need to do some sort of impact analysis of adding something else, those tools will already be built, or at least there's some place to start. Because you and I both invented our own ways, came at very different angles, but I think they're both good, and I think we could probably generalize that. Okay, so
that sounds good.
Cool.
So can we close that out on the basis that this percentage of impact is already being addressed in other work, in that we're working on staffing for SAS anyway?
That sounds.
So I can just close it out.
Yeah, and then let's create a follow-up issue to document.
Okay, cool.
Number 6 is mine. Oh wait, is it? Where are these? I don't know where these things came from. Yes, it's mine. Okay, FRTX spending more time in needs org is causing a dip in performance. I don't have any update on this one. Number 7 is closed out as not supported. US federal has not had a significant effect on our overall metrics. And where are we in the agenda? So actually, there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, is in our exit criteria. We talked about, sorry, I need to pull this link up before we start, is what I need to do. So our exit criteria number 2 is like, create a dashboard that exposes metrics, good. Targets, good. But what actions get triggered when things go down? That's what I would like to talk about for just maybe a couple of minutes, and figure out how we're going to tackle that piece of our exit criteria. So Wang Ming, you've already built something where I think your intention is to trigger some action when things go down. Is that?
Yes. It's a bit So the reason why I built this that dashboard that I showed earlier is because in APAC we are trying or going to try an experiment where we just remove the SLA hot row entirely. And we are doing that out of necessity just because of rotation, because of staffing. Rotations are pretty wild, and we want to give more flexibility back to the team in terms of being able to swap shifts and stuff. So what we are doing is, let's try removing that SLA hot row, and then the idea is let's give this dashboard to the team so that they can sort of monitor how performance is going, and then I don't know, be more motivated to step in and keep things going on their own. The other use for this dashboard is so that the managers can kind of look at it and also know that, things may have degraded to a certain point where we find it unacceptable, and we kind of need to end the experiment. At the same time, it does give managers an idea of things are trending downwards or things are looking poor this week. But yeah, the question is, even when we look at that, what's the action we can take? So that's something that I haven't quite figured out quite yet. I know that we've discussed this at team meetings, and the ideas that the team have are that when things look rough, they have certain actions they can take. Initiate a crash session or start pairing, stuff like that. I'm not sure how scalable that is in terms of like actions we can take. Because it kind of, there's a lot of team initiative involved there right now, and I guess individual initiative, and it's not very well defined. So I'm guessing if we do run the experiment, maybe we will get a better idea of what those actions might be. And I have a feeling that it will probably have to be engineer driven rather than manager driven anyway. But honestly, I don't know, but that's the state of where my mind is right now.
What kind of numbers are we thinking of? Because Tom, last time he mentioned somewhere 95 and 3%, 93% is the red line. But we also have right now 95% for asset and FRT and 85% is the red line. So do we want to maybe start with assuming that the red line that we have is a red line for after which we want to start acting? Or do we want to define different numbers? So if, let's say for a given month, NRT goes under 85, then okay, we need to perform some actions, adding more people, looking at how do we do SLAs, or is 85 for NRT too lax of a kind of figure? Or do we want a standard deviation? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I was going to say that that's sort of, I've been trying to capture some of the questions, and that's sort of the question in my mind is like, when and how often are we looking at this data? Like, are we looking at it hour by hour and providing guidance to engineers for how they might organize their workday to optimize these metrics? Or are we taking a look at it week by week and taking actions at the week scale? Like, what's the unit of time where we're taking action?
I think it depends on what level of action. So on a week by week basis, my intuition, just it's intuition, says that we can take action on a monthly basis, because then we can see some kind of spread, but it might be too late on that monthly basis. That's the other side of the coin. But yet again, I would like to avoid knee-jerk reactions, because something happened on a specific week and then suddenly we change our modes of operation because of a specific week. So
let me just share that dashboard again and illustrate. So if you're talking specifically about say manager-led intervention or whatever, some kind of intervention, I think a weekly look is probably the best. So the reason why I'm sharing this is take a look at the SAS or .com FRT. If you look at the 28-day FRT, and I'm not sure how accurate this is, but say this is accurate, the 28-day FRT doesn't actually look that bad for APAC anyway, 78.2%. But if you look at the weekly trend, this week we're at 33.3%, week to date. Last week we were at 60.47%, and the week before that we were at about 90%. So you can kind of see that if this trend continues, this is obviously going to go down pretty drastically as well. And I think that's where we can kind of take action. So I think we kind of have to review it on a week by week basis, but also know that, yeah, it's not about a knee jerk. It's kind of looking at the trend, like the short term trend versus the longer term trend, and deciding, you know, do we need to take action now? And I'm not sure if the action is going to be as simple as let's investigate, or the action is going to be something like, hey team, we really need to do something here. So, but yeah, I think in terms of if you're talking about times where intervention might be necessary, I think we do need to monitor it week by week. I think the monthly would be a bit too much of a lag, I think.
I think you and I may be talking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, about the same idea, just in different directions. So you're suggesting let's monitor the weekly, and I agree with you on that. I guess the question is, should we actually act on the weekly, or should we act on the monthly or quarterly? I mean,
oh yeah. So
yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah,
I think we are talking about the same thing, and I do agree with you as well that let's not have knee-jerk reactions. So what I'm thinking is that we review things. We do review something on a weekly basis, but we also need to bear in mind the longer term trend, which is why in that dashboard there's a weekly view and there's also a 28-day view, so that, you know, we don't just look at this week and go, yeah, I mean, I don't know, hit the emergency button and, you know, cause a lot of panic when actually, you know, things are fine. Maybe next week things will be well. So I think we kind of need to look at both the short term as well as maybe a mid to longer term view and look at it holistically together. Otherwise, yeah, we'll probably not probably not be able to get the best results if we look at either in isolation. That's what I feel so far.
I think it also depends on the scope of what action you're trying to take. Like if you're suggesting to the team, FRT on .com's gone down a little bit, like spend 10% more of your time on .com next week. Like that's a pretty small intervention that will get a fairly large gain if everybody does that. And it's not completely changing everything that we do. But if we look at sort of like the month and quarter in aggregate, like if we're resource starved, all of our metrics are going to start going down. Then we're going to have to look at either more efficiency or more hiring. And so it's sort of, I think it's a both and. It's providing a sort of a single pane of glass that engineers can look at and understand what actions they should, like how they should organize their work during the week. Maybe that means putting a side project a little bit on back burner just because we want to make sure that we're bumping something up this week. It's not like changing every workflow. It's just changing how I act to this week to help the team.
So it sounds like we can actually come up for this conversation with actual actionable items for specific things. Like what you said is a great idea. I think that if on a weekly basis, on the weekly monitoring, we see that we're going down, mentioned on the kind of group calls that we need to focus later on. If let's say we're dropping under 85% NLT on a monthly basis, then we can start considering maybe looking into the load on the team, how many people there are in it. Yeah, and if we reach 50%, I don't know, then something even more severe. Okay, sounds good.
So keep thinking about this. We are a little bit over time, so I don't want to keep Wei-Ming too late, but go ahead, Wei-Ming, if you have a last point.
Yeah, I actually wanted to just put it out there. So I think going back to your original question, Lau, which is we might have this pane of glass which tells us something, but yeah, what are the actions that we take? I think we don't really have a good idea of what that toolbox looks like right now. And I'm not sure if this is the right group to sort of talk about that. But yeah, I don't think we have a good idea of what our toolbox kind of looks like in terms of, so we have to take some action, but yeah, what can we do? You know, so yeah, I think that's something we need to think about.
Yeah, I think that we can definitely, as a group of the metrics team, define red lines where if we drop more than X% over week, if we dropped over X% month on month, then yeah, engage the toolbox, whatever that may be.
Yep. No,
Okay.
I think that, yeah, this has been very helpful. It seems like there's two pieces, monitoring and action. We're saying the function of this group is to take on monitoring. We're going to figure out what is the data we're looking at, when and how often we're looking at it. We're perhaps going to suggest who is looking at it, and we're going to suggest when actions should trigger. We're not defining the toolbox that managers and engineers can take. We're going to pass that off and say, here's your stuff, figure out how. Okay, great. Very helpful. Thank you all. We'll see you next week at the new time. I'll get that scheduled right away. And have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Right. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.